Developed and published by Sega, Phantasy Star is an RPG that was released on the Sega Master System in North America in November of 1988. One of the true 8-bit RPG pioneers, Phantasy Star thrusts you into the role of female protagonist Alice, who's on a revenge-filled journey to defeat the evil ruler of her star system. King Lassic's cruel hand has gone too far, extending over to Alice's brother, who is vanquished by the diabolical ruler. It is now up to Alice to traverse planets, gather a team of capable warriors, and slay King Lassic to return peace to not only the star system, but to her inner self. Right off the bat, you will likely compare Phantasy Star to that of Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior, the two other powerhouse franchises of the era. To me, I do think that each game offers something unique to the player which helps them stand the test of time, and they are all epic in my eyes. However, I think you can make the strong case that Phantasy Star is the superior of the trio, even if we're only focusing on the technical aspects of the game. Phantasy Star is truly remarkable for the time. When you're playing, Phantasy Star almost feels like a midway point between 8-bit and 16-bit. Aside from the overworld and town exploration, Phantasy Star's bread and butter revolves around the first-person battling and dungeon crawling. The animation of traversing the dungeons is very fluid and impressive for the Sega Master System. Not only that, but the graphics and colors are very well detailed, and quite honestly, it's probably the most vibrant RPG of this era. One very unique feature that Phantasy Star has going for it are the animations. For the most part, the overworld, town, and vehicle animations are done very well. Things such as the sea, antlions in the desert, etc. are always moving, helping giving life to otherwise static maps that would be present in other games. But where Phantasy Star truly shines is in the battles. The enemies all have animated attacks, many of which look very sleek and natural, and some enemies even have multiple attacks, essentially giving them a moveset. Many RPGs of this era, while fun, are stagnant and slow-paced. Phantasy Star busts that trend. In Phantasy Star, there's a heavy influence of science fiction stemming from Star Wars, along with the typical fantasy elements of RPGs. The science fiction element is present in the overall tone, name of some weapons, things such as the laser guns, and even the transportation. Instead of just walking, riding, sailing, and flying around the overworld, you're actually able to leave your world in spaceships to different planets. Alice's hometown and your starting area of Palma is a run-of-the-mill earthy planet, while Matavia is a land of vast deserts and aforementioned antlions. And Dezoris, or Dezoris, is a cool, icy haven with lots of caves and goodies for your quest. Phantasy Star boasts an addictive soundtrack that progresses quite well. Many of the tunes are memorable, enjoyable, and help wisp you along in your quest. One of my favorite things about the soundtrack, though, is the slow ramp up to big moments. When you first hear what I dub the dungeon track, towards the tail end of the game you'll be bobbing your head like no tomorrow. The soundtrack lets you know when things are about to get real. Another positive that Phantasy Star has going for it is the difficulty. Aside from the early game slog, which consists of you grinding for experience points and mesetas, or I don't know how to pronounce it, the currency in the game, returning to Alice's hometown to heal for free, rinsing and repeating, the game does progress quite well. Yes, you may have some return trips to the dungeons here and there, especially in the mid-game, and it might be wise to do some grinding from time to time, but overall this is not a grindy RPG. The longest grind session that I had besides the very beginning of the game was to get the Ice Digger vehicle in Dezoris, because I was fresh out of gold. That being said, the endgame can provide some good challenges in the form of final dungeons and the last two bosses. My tips? Explore all areas, talk to everyone, keep your graph paper handy, draw those maps, learn from your mistakes, and you won't have too perilous of a journey, yet not easy enough to just mash buttons and wander around aimlessly. One quick thing that I did want to mention was the post-battle and dungeon looting of treasure chests. Each chest that you open in the game has a chance to be a damaging trap. Not sure what was up with Sega at this time, as I believe one of the Alice Kid games also implemented some form of chance. I think it was rock, paper, scissors, with a potential bad result. Maybe they just love gambling. I don't know. Anyways, I could really go on and on, but in the spirit of my shorter reviews, I gotta wrap this up. Phantasy Star was a truly unique experience and taken me aback by just how truly great it was. It's a shame to me that it doesn't get as spoken of as highly in general as, say, Final Fantasy or Dragon Warrior, but I'm sure the real ones know. If you haven't played Phantasy Star before, you owe it to yourself to do so. It's truly a technical marvel cramming so much onto a 4MB cartridge, bolstered by solid game and story progression, with only minor gripes of the initial hour or two grind slog, some truly frustrating dungeons mid-game, and the bout of occasional crypticness that almost every single RPG of this era had. Otherwise, this is an absolute gem. I cannot wait to get to the rest of the series in the near future, as they've been sitting on my shelves for years. I give Phantasy Star on the Sega Master System a 9 out of 10. If you've enjoyed this review, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I do my best to reply to every single comment, and until next time, guys.